forced the nuclear power industry out of the marketplace by removing those subsidies. So there is a huge role. I mean, there's various pathways. I mentioned King's North actually because it's been sustained direct action that has forced a lot of the subsidies, introduced a lot of the risk into the profile of this company that have made these dirty, expensive projects unaffordable, and have actually brought around the realization that that all these projects, the externalized costs from all these projects are borne by the communities that ultimately have to, sort of take, a stand. And so it's really about, I guess it's more of a long-term, social change strategy we're talking about. But
it's not just about Copenhagen.
It's not just about Copenhagen, yeah. And I think climate justice, I think we can explore that term more deeply at another time, but it really embodies much more to climate change. Well, it basically begs the question, what are the other faces of climate change? What, beyond the scientific debate, beyond the cost of carbon, what are the human impacts of climate change? What does it mean to stabilize the climate in terms of the lives that are going to be saved?
I was going to respond a little bit to that too, in terms of an acknowledgement for both the two of you and others in the mobilization who have been on top of their jobs, putting in blood, sweat, and tears to make this mobilization real, and the fact that y'all reached out to us to be localized was really appreciated, and we've been enjoying playing a part in the mobilization. And it was gratifying to me, even though I think it was probably a PR move on the part of Chevron to respond within days of the action saying, we want to meet with you and find out what your concerns are, right? But at least that shows that mobilization has some power and that it's causing Chevron to sit up and take notice. And I noted at one of the recent meetings that we had about the debrief from the Convergence was that all these groups from across the nation are looking to the Mobilization for Climate Justice West as a model to replicate in their organizing efforts. So I think that's an exciting, also testament to the work that's been done. So thank you for the time and energy you've been putting in above and beyond.
Thank you, and all of you as well. I mean, that's I think one of the best parts about this whole project, like you were saying, is really getting to know each other. By having Aaron there, having all the groups from around the Bay Area meet. This is the first time I've been told that I'm pretty new to the Bay Area, that a lot of East Bay groups and San Francisco groups have gotten together, that a lot of groups representing people of color communities and activist communities that NGOs in San Francisco really meet are coming together and talking about their common issues for the first time. So it's been a good, exciting process.
I'm obviously young and learning a lot about this, but what's been really educational to me is how folks in the mobilization are putting these frontline communities, many communities of color and low-income communities, in the front of the organizing and the planning, and making sure their needs and their interests are really heavily addressed in all of our actions and all of our messaging. It's super inspiring.
So along those lines, that orientation, so it's notable that orientation, and I don't know if you were here for the first presentation about the Oakland Climate Energy and Climate Action Plan and the work of the Oakland Climate Action Coalition, is also, for the most part, focused in the flatlands of Oakland in terms of an engagement strategy that really tries to empower those communities around the question of taking some local power and democratizing energy, building sustainable communities, sustainable economic development and whatnot. So that's a very strong synergy. What I just wanted to ask is, like, on a more strategic sense or in a more strategic level, how do you see the street heat type of movements relating to more, building of local power bases in the community type movements, and where do those things merge, and how do they come together?
I guess a couple of thoughts from my side are that a lot of us, we've been having a discussion around really the role of direct action. And oftentimes direct action is seen as a tactic in a larger sort of, larger mix of tactics and strategies. For communities and for the aspirations of community-based groups, I think direct action should be looked at as a long-term organizing strategy that both empowers people to get involved. Sometimes it's the easiest, most accessible way for a lot of youth to get involved. It really empowers people to step up and say, hey, despite the wealth and the power of big corporations, there are many of us and there are few of them, and we can get out there and do stuff. It also really challenges the authority of lawmakers whose laws, whose decisions are tailored to the needs of corporate profits, and I think that's where pushing that line is important. I think historically, some of the most significant changes we've seen in this country are due to direct action and nonviolent civil disobedience, and I think internationally, I think some of the turning points against colonial powers and corporate powers have been due to people stepping up and putting themselves out on the street. I think today we're dealing with an era of carbon colonialism, where we need to bring the debate back to these corporations at their doorsteps. And so one of the ways where I see, I think, politically on a larger framework really shifts the debate is taking the power back from these policy arenas where the corporate power is obfuscated and bringing it back to the fight between people and corporations. Locally, I think what it does, again, is what Ellen spoke to earlier, was really the empowerment and the community organizing pathway, where if we can ever secure space for local solutions, I think it will be due to mass mobilization, because that makes the cost of doing business for the big corporations unaffordable.
I think straight up community education has been huge. It's empowering the community to be a part of that power structure. When we were marching through the streets of Richmond, a lot of folks were just coming out of their houses wondering what we were doing. They heard the music at the BART station and came out and tried to figure out what was going on. So we were passing out flyers and pamphlets about how this issue of climate change has been talked about in really technical, lofty terms, how that actually impacts your community, and talking to folks, they're like, oh yeah, I remember that when it smelled really bad that one day, and I remember getting the check the next month from Chevron, And it's like, well, essentially that kind of voice needs to be included in the climate debate. I think that's what we're doing too. And then the convergence was all educational.